a blood disorder creating an overabundance of iron in the body. It collects in the vital organs, causing them to break down. Sufferers often become immune to insulin, leaving them vulnerable to diabetic attacks. Once thought extremely rare, new studies indicate it could occur once in every 600 people. There are 8 known cases in Victoria alone, 2 of them in Marie Warder's family. Her husband nearly died from it. Her daughter will have a normal life through early diagnosis. Warder would like to form a foundation to give hemochromatosis a higher profile.
We would like, first of all, for it to become almost a household word. We'd like people to know the word hemochromatosis as well as they know flu, because this will make doctors perhaps spot it even at the family physician level before people need to go from one specialist to another. We would like also to make contact with people out there who already have it.
One of the more visible symptoms of the disease is a discoloration of the skin. When afflicted with the disease, which wasn't diagnosed until 7 years ago, Tom Warder's hands were a purplish brown. The prescribed treatment, a decrease in iron intake through diet, and regular phlebotomies, or bleedings.
When I was right in the throes of it, I didn't have much will to live either. I was so lethargic, I couldn't walk properly, and my memory had gone. I couldn't think properly, and this associated with diabetes, which is also rather demoralizing. I didn't know what was happening to me, and as soon as they started the phlebotomies, almost the first 3 or 4 times I'd been, I felt the difference, a lightening, an easing of my system.
The Warder's daughter is an example of what they hope their proposed foundation will achieve, early detection through public awareness. It was originally thought young women couldn't contact hemochromatosis, but through early diagnosis, Lee Vanderscape has avoided the debilitating side effects that struck her father.
We're just very lucky, that's all.
Do you have any effects now at all from the disease?
No, no. The only thing that I have to put up with is going every 2 months to have a phlebotomy, which is quite trouble-free, really.
And that's it?
That's it, at this point anyway.
Proper diet is very important for a hemochromatosis sufferer. Surrounded by a world that enriches almost everything with iron, they stand alone looking for food low in the mineral capable of shutting down their body's systems.
My husband is diabetic, so to buy food for him is so difficult as it is. It takes me an hour to buy a loaf of bread because I read every label to see how much sugar there is in it. Now I find I've got to also read to see how much iron there is in everything.
Low iron food products are just one aim of the proposed Hemochromatosis Foundation. By contacting current sufferers and reaching more undiagnosed cases, it hopes to bring this incurable disease under control.
We already have members in Ontario and in other places outside of BC, and we want a branch of the society to be available to them. In fact, we want to establish as many centres as we possibly can.
The society now has a logo, with the dragon representing the disease doctors still are reluctant to recognize, and a slogan, a reminder the disease left unchecked can be fatal. Early detection can be made through simple blood tests. Those suffering can lead normal lives through the avoidance of iron-enriched foods and regular bleedings. And the disease is more widespread than most doctors realized.
Since we started off with just the family, I guess you'd say that it's increased about 3,000%. It's gone from nothing to quite a reasonable membership. In each case, one person speaks on behalf of perhaps 4 or 5 others.
Initially thought of as a middle-aged man's disease, hemochromatosis knows no age or sex barriers.
It does not affect only middle-aged people. I would say now we are hearing from as many people in their early 30s as we are from middle-aged people, and also that it is not true that it only affects men. We have an equal percentage of women writing to us.
The Canadian Hemochromatosis Society now has representatives in Comox, Kamloops, and Terrace. More are expected to follow as the list of victims continues to grow for a disease doctors thought nobody had.
Hemochromatosis, too much iron in the blood. The iron attacks the joints and key organs like the heart, liver, and pancreas.
I was in constant pain all the time for years. It was literally for years. Just kept on building up and building up until...
For years, Ney's doctor thought it was a bad case of arthritis. But then Ney's got lucky. He got a bleeding ulcer.
We were about to transfuse him because his blood was way down. He said, no, I felt better than I have for years. So then we started doing a few more tests on him, and the penny finally dropped. Yeah. There we go.
The treatment is simple. In fact, it dates back to the Middle Ages. Old-fashioned bloodletting. Once a week, Ney gives up a pint of blood. That removes the excess iron. 20 months ago, before being diagnosed as having hemochromatosis, Ney's joints were so crippled he needed crutches to walk, but not anymore.
Well, where I had pain all over my body, now I have pain in localized little areas, and they move around. You get one and then it goes away and another appears. In other words, the iron is being relieved. And
Ney's story is not unusual. Hemochromatosis is hereditary. Researchers say 1 in 10 Canadians carry the gene, and that 1 in 400 suffer from some form of the disease. Most don't even know they have it.
And so if you don't look for it, you tend not to find it, because maybe those people who had the arthritis wouldn't have gotten the heart failure or the liver disease necessarily. And they might not have been picked up unless people were suspecting the diagnosis and did the appropriate tests.
Doctors like Steinbrecher fear the number of serious cases of hemochromatosis will increase. Usually, the iron buildup is a slow process, taking 20 to 30 years to do serious organ damage. But doctors fear the trend to iron supplements in our food will accelerate the damage.
If you increase the iron content of the average North American diet, and if 1 out of 400 people has got the gene for hemochromatosis, you are going to, by that dietary intervention, you're going to make more of them symptomatic with the disease.
That raises another problem. Until recently, hemochromatosis was thought of as a rare disease. Most doctors don't think to test for it.
it was probably 20 years ago, probably, that I began to think that there was something else besides arthritis in my body. But it was hard to convince anybody else that that's true. They can't feel the pain, they can't see the symptoms, and so on.
So how aware today would you say most GPs are of hemochromatosis?
Not too well informed, I would think.
See you next week.
Yeah, okay.
Richie Ney suffered for years before his doctor made the correct diagnosis. Now patients like him have formed a society to try and educate the medical community, so others won't have to suffer. Brian Dubray, CBC News, Vancouver.
They used to call this disease bronze diabetes because of the permanent tan that its victims get. These days they call it hemochromatosis, and it's the talk of the medical community right now. It's been around for 150 years, but doctors have just recently learned how to tell who has it, and they're finding that a lot more people have it than at first thought. The background first, then the discussion.
We've all seen this sight before, people giving blood to the Red Cross for use in an emergency. But there are a growing number of people who give blood for a different reason. They're actually being bled once, twice, 3 times a week as treatment for a disease called hemochromatosis. Yes, doctors are using a medieval medical practice, that's been civilized of course, to treat a modern disease. Hemochromatosis is just now starting to make the headlines in the medical community. A fall issue of the BC Medical Journal describes it as a genetic disorder that results in an accumulation of iron in the liver. Here are the major symptoms: diabetes, arthritis, liver failure, heart failure, and a permanent discoloration of the skin that looks like a tan. And the numbers may surprise you. 280,000 people in BC, or about 11% of the population, are thought to be carriers of the disease. As many as 10,000 people suffer from it. Hemochromatosis is genetic. It runs in families. If the parents are both carriers of the recessive gene that signals the disease, the child may end up with a pair of recessive genes and has a very good chance of getting hemochromatosis.